The dress cost $47,000. Ilara Voss had not chosen it. It had been chosen for her, by the seamstresses of the Ashford pack, by the Alpha's mother, by tradition itself. A tradition older than the marble floors of the Ashford estate, older than the portraits of snarling, silver-eyed men that lined every hallway like a gallery of warnings she had been too foolish to read. She stood before the mirror now, her dark hair pinned up with pearl clips, her waist cinched into white silk that whispered every time she breathed, and she thought, I look like a woman who has already surrendered. Because she had, hadn't she? 5 years. 5 years of being Damien Ashford's chosen mate, not fated, not claimed in the old way with moonlight and blood and the howl that split the sky, but chosen rationally, strategically, the way one might choose a property in a good neighborhood, close to the right schools, aesthetically pleasing, structurally sound. She had told herself it was enough. Her best friend, Juno, appeared behind her in the mirror, already in her maid-of-honor dress, a soft blush that complemented her brown skin beautifully, carrying 2 glasses and a bottle of the pack's finest single malt. Scotch, Juno said, because this is either the beginning of a beautiful life or the beginning of an absolutely legendary story, and either way you need to be slightly warmed up. Ilara laughed despite herself. It's 2 in the afternoon. It's your wedding day. Juno poured without ceremony and pressed a glass into Ilara's gloved hand. Rules don't apply. Ilara sipped. The scotch was peaty and warm, and it settled into her chest like a small, brave fire. She studied herself again. Dark brown eyes, the color of coffee at the bottom of a cup. A jaw that her mother had always called too stubborn for a Luna asterisk. Shoulders that the Ashford seamstresses had clucked over too broad, too athletic, not soft enough. She was 26 years old. She had a doctorate in environmental biology, 3 published papers, and a laugh that made rooms turn. She was, by every measurable standard, extraordinary. And she had spent 5 years making herself smaller to fit inside Damien Ashford's shadow. You're thinking too much, Juno said. I'm always thinking too much. Today especially counts. Juno sat on the edge of the chaise lounge, crossing her long legs. Talk to me. What's the actual feeling? Underneath the dress and the pearls and the $47,000 satin that I'm not allowed to spill scotch on. Ilara considered the question the way she considered all serious questions, with her whole self, nothing held back. Nervous, she said, but not the good kind, not the this is the best day of my life kind. What kind then? She met Juno's eyes in the mirror. The kind like I'm walking towards something I can't take back. Juno was quiet for a moment. Then she said carefully, you don't have to take it back, Ilara. You could just not walk toward it at all. I love him. I know you do. Juno's voice was gentle, without judgment. I also know that love is not always the same thing as right. Ilara finished the scotch. It'll be fine, she said, and she almost believed it. The Ashford estate was the kind of place that made ordinary people feel small. 400 acres of old-growth forest in the mountains of the Pacific Northwest, the main house a sprawling stone manor that had stood for 3 generations of Ashford Alphas. The pack's territory ran to the river in the east and the ridge in the west, and every wolf within it had been born knowing who they answered to. Today, the grounds were decorated with thousands of white flowers, peonies, gardenias, white roses so large they looked artificial, and the 230 guests who moved through them like a tide of expensive clothing and practiced smiles were, to a person, someone important. Pack alphas, business partners, politicians who smiled at wolves because wolves built things, protected things, and could be very persuasive when the need arose. Ilara's own family, her father, retired from his position as a border sentinel, her mother, who cried at anything, and her younger sister Petra, who had inherited every ounce of the stubbornness their mother always blamed on Alara. And then there was the other guest. Alara saw him from the window of the bridal suite, quite by accident, as she was checking her lipstick for the 4th time, and Juno was doing something complicated with her veil. He arrived not through the front gate with the other guests, but through the eastern tree line, through the forest, which was either a profound breach of etiquette or a statement so deliberate it amounted to the same thing. He was tall. That was the first thing. Tall in the way that certain men were tall, not merely in physical stature but in presence, as though the space around him reorganized itself to accommodate him. He wore a dark suit, no tie, his collar open at the throat. His hair was black, slightly overlong, pushed back from a face that was, even from this distance, arresting. He moved through the garden with the unhurried confidence of someone who owned not just this ground, but every ground he had ever walked on. 2 of Damien's sentinels moved toward him. Alara watched the conversation, the sentinels stiff and bristling, the stranger utterly relaxed, almost amused, one hand in his pocket while the other gestured loosely. After a moment both sentinels stepped back, their body language shifted entirely, and the stranger walked on unimpeded. "Juno," Alara said. "Almost done." "Who is that?" Juno appeared at her shoulder and looked out the window. She went very still. "Oh," she said. "Who is that?" "That," Juno said slowly, "is Caius Dren." The name landed in the room like a stone, dropped in still water. Alara knew the name. Every wolf in the northern hemisphere knew the name. Caius Dren, the Alpha King of the Dren dynasty, the oldest, most powerful wolf bloodline in North America, where Damien Ashford was an alpha of a wealthy, influential regional pack. Caius Dren was something else entirely, something older. He sat above the pack hierarchy the way a mountain sat above the hills at its feet. He and Damien had history. Every wolf knew that too. The 2 of them had grown up as rivals, the established Ashford heir and the young Dren king, circling each other across negotiating tables and territorial borders for a decade. The rivalry was not violent. It was colder than that. "Why is he here?" Alara asked. "I have no idea," Juno said. "But I think that's a question worth answering before you walk down the aisle." Damien Ashford was, by any objective measure, beautiful. Dark gold hair that caught light easily, eyes the color of new ice, pale gray, almost colorless, startling against his tanned skin, a jaw that photographers loved and rivals envied. He was the kind of man who walked into rooms and changed the temperature of them. He was also, Alara had learned across 5 years, the kind of man who had a vast interior life that he shared with almost no one. She had thought in the beginning that she was special, that the glimpses he gave her of his private self meant she was being let in. It had taken her 3 years to understand that those glimpses were all there was, that Damien was not a deep lake with still waters. He was a very sophisticated surface, polished, reflective, giving back to you exactly what you projected. She had not stopped loving him for it, but she had stopped expecting him to be more than he was. She found him an hour before the ceremony in his father's old study, a room that smelled of cigars and leather and old wood, standing with a glass of scotch and his back to the door. "It's bad luck," she said, "for the groom to be brooding on his wedding day." He turned, and there it was, that smile, the one that had first made her stop walking in the middle of the campus courtyard 6 years ago, that had made her think, "Oh, there you are. There is the person I've been waiting to meet." "You look extraordinary," he said. "I know." She crossed the room and stopped close to him, close enough to smell his cologne, cedar, and something dark, something slightly wild, the wolf underneath the tailoring. "Damien, why is Caius Dren at our wedding?" Something moved across his face, there and gone so fast she might have imagined it. "He was invited," Damien said. "By whom?" "By me." She waited. He and I have been in negotiations, Damien said. Territory, resources, a partnership that will asterisk be significant for the pack. He took a sip of his scotch. It made sense to include him, show of goodwill. Our asterisk wedding as a business meeting. Everything is a business meeting, Alara. You know that. She did know that. She had known it for a long time. She had told herself it was pragmatism, maturity, the way adults operated in the real world. Standing here now, in her $47,000 dress, 1 hour before becoming his Luna, she found that she did not love that answer as much as she used to. Are you happy? She asked. He looked at her. What kind of question is that? The most basic kind. She held his gaze. Are you happy, Damien, today, right now? He set his glass down. He cupped her face in both hands, careful of the makeup, careful of the veil, and he looked at her with those ice-gray eyes that gave nothing away and said, I'm going to take care of you. I promise you that. It was not an answer to the question she had asked. She kissed him anyway. Juno came to find her 17 minutes before she was supposed to walk down the aisle. Alara was in the small anteroom off the main hall, doing the kind of breathing that was technically called asterisk meditative, but that everyone who actually did it called asterisk trying not to panic, when Juno came through the door with a face that Alara had never seen on her before. Juno was not a woman who was easily shaken. She had once talked Alara through a grizzly bear encounter with the same calm competence she brought to spreadsheets and dinner reservations. She did not rattle. She was rattled now. Juno, Alara stood. What happened? I need you to, Juno stopped, started again. I need you to come with me, quietly. Right now. The ceremony. Alara. The way she said it, not loud, not dramatic, just that one word weighted with everything she wasn't saying, made Alara's body go cold in a way that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. She followed Juno down the back hallway, through the service corridor that connected the anteroom to the east wing, all of it deserted because every person in the building was either seated in the ceremony garden or preparing to be. Their heels were quiet on the stone. The flowers outside blurred in Alara's peripheral vision. Juno stopped at the door to the East Wing library and pressed her ear to it briefly, before easing it open and guiding Alara to look through the gap. And Alara looked. Later she would try to reconstruct exactly what she saw, because the mind does strange things with images it refuses to accept, fragments them, softens them, makes them abstract. But the fundamental facts were simple. Damien was in the library. He was not alone. The woman was blonde, her bridesmaid dress half undone, her hand in Damien's hair, and he was holding her face the same way he had held Alara's face 20 minutes ago, with the same careful precision, and he was saying something low that Alara couldn't hear through the door, but she could see his mouth and she could read enough. I know, after tonight, I promise. After tonight it changes, she'll never know. Juno eased the door shut. The hallway was very quiet. Alara stood in her $47,000 dress, her pearl clips, her veil, her hands that were completely steady because she realized, gone somewhere past the place where hands shook. How long? Alara said. Her voice was calm, remarkable really. I don't know, Juno said. I heard them when I was looking for extra programs. I think it might be Sasha. Sasha Vrel, Damien's ex, the woman his pack had always assumed he would eventually end up with before he chose Alara, the woman who appeared at every pack function with the particular composure of someone waiting for something they were very sure was coming. Okay, Alara said. Okay. Okay, Alara looked down at her hands, still steady, still completely, eerily steady. I'm not going to cry. Not here, not where anyone can see. Alara. I need 5 minutes, she turned. not toward the ceremony garden, toward the door that led to the back terrace. 5 minutes and then I need you to get my bag from the suite, the small black one. It has my car keys and my wallet and my passport. Your passport. My passport, Alara confirmed. Because I have been an idiot for 5 years, but I am not going to be an idiot for 5 years and asterisk one day. Chapter 5, The Woman on the Terrace. Caius Dren had attended a great many events he had not wanted to attend. He had sat through 17-course state dinners in honor of alphas, whose conversation made him want to tip the table. He had attended pack ceremonies where the ritual was so outdated it was practically archaeological. He had, on one memorable occasion, sat through a 6-hour mediation between 2 border packs who were, at the molecular level, arguing about a asterisk rock. He was good at concealing boredom. It was, he sometimes thought, his most useful skill. He had come to the Ashford wedding because Damien had asked, and because the territory negotiation was at a stage where refusing would have sent a message Caius was not yet ready to send. He had shaken hands with the right people. He had declined 3 invitations to discuss investment opportunities. He had drunk 1 glass of the Ashford single malt, which was, he admitted privately, genuinely exceptional, and then he had stepped away from the pre-ceremony reception toward the East Terrace because he needed air and quiet in roughly equal measure. He had not expected to find anyone there. She was standing at the terrace railing with her back to him, white dress, dark hair, the whole tableau of a bride on her wedding day. And there was something in the set of her shoulders, the precise stillness of them, that stopped him before he could announce himself or retreat. She was not crying. That was the first thing. Women in the kind of pain that was radiating off this woman in almost visible waves usually cried, or raged, or both, in rapid alternating sequence. This woman was doing neither. She was simply standing, very still, her hands on the railing, looking out at the mountains, and she was clearly doing something very deliberate and very controlled with her own interior. He recognized it. He had done it himself. That specific discipline of refusing to come apart until you were somewhere that coming apart was survivable. He should leave. This was clearly private. He did not leave. Instead, he crossed the terrace quietly and stood at the railing a few feet from her, and he looked at the mountains too. After a moment she said, without turning, "If you're here to tell me the ceremony starts in 8 minutes, I already know." "I'm not," he said. She went still in a different way, then she turned. He watched her take him in, the recognition moving through her eyes in a wave, the particular quality of surprise that came from seeing someone in person after knowing them only by reputation. He took her in too. Dark eyes that were doing the most extraordinary thing, holding everything they felt while simultaneously letting nothing out. A jaw that was clenched only slightly, only enough to betray the effort. White silk, pearl clips, a mouth that looked like it was most naturally curved into a smile and was currently held by sheer force of will in a neutral line. She was, Caius thought with some surprise, remarkable. "You're Caius Dren," she said. "I am. I'm the bride." "I know who you are, Dr. Voss." Something flickered across her face. "You know my work. Watershed management in shifting climate corridors. Your second paper was particularly interesting. The argument for managed retreat as a conservation strategy rather than a failure mode. I had my team run a simulation on the methodology." He paused. It held. She stared at him. "You came to my wedding," she said slowly, "having read my academic papers." "I read everything about everyone I negotiate with." He held her gaze. "Damien Ashford matters to me strategically. You matter to Damien Ashford. The logic follows." "Mattered asterisk," she said, past tense, careful and deliberate as a scalpel. He looked at her. She looked back. "Are you all right, Dr. Voss?" he asked. No, she said, and that single syllable, stripped of everything decorative, was the most honest thing he had heard all day. But I will be. Juno appeared on the terrace with the small black bag and something else. A pint of Haagen-Dazs salted caramel ice cream, which she presented to Alara with the gravity of a sacrament. From the catering kitchen, Juno said. The caterer is a woman of good instincts. She took one look at my face and gave it to me without asking any questions. Alara took the ice cream. She looked at it. She looked at Caius Dren, who was still standing at the railing, who had the particular quality of a man who had decided to stay and had therefore become immovable. This is Caius Dren, she told Juno. Juno looked at him with the frank, unintimidated appraisal that was one of her finest qualities. I know who he is. He read my papers. Did he? Both of them. Juno looked at Alara, then back at Caius. Do you want him to leave? Alara considered this. She opened the ice cream. She took a bite directly from the container, which she suspected was not what the $47,000 dress was designed to accompany, and she thought about it seriously. No, she said, actually no. She held the container out to Caius. Haagen-Dazs. He looked at the container, he looked at her. He took it without comment, took a bite, and the absolute composure with which the Alpha King of the Dren dynasty ate ice cream directly from a pint container on a back terrace, while a wedding proceeded without its bride 20 meters away was, Alara thought, either deeply absurd or deeply impressive. She couldn't decide which. He handed it back. The scotch inside is quite good, he said. I know, I've had it. She ate another bite. I'm not going in there. I assumed not. He's been, she stopped, started again, stripped it down to the facts, the way she stripped everything down when emotion threatened to overwhelm the structure. He chose someone else, on our wedding day. He chose her and kept me as the plan, and I walked into it like. She stopped. Like someone who loved him, Caius said. She looked at him sharply. Not a failure, he said, an accurate description. I'm a scientist, she laughed, and it was a short, sharp sound almost surprised out of her. I'm supposed to look at evidence. I'm supposed to form hypotheses and test them and revise based on data. And the data was asterisk there, wasn't it? The signs were there. I just wanted to be wrong about what they meant. Yes. He was quiet for a moment. Then, what are you going to do? She met his eyes. I'm going to leave. Okay. Right now, before the ceremony, before he comes looking. Before anyone realizes what's happening except the 230 people sitting in those chairs who are about to watch a bride not show up. She said it plainly, without drama, taking its measure. It will be quite a thing. It will, Caius agreed. Are you going to try to talk me out of it? No. She studied him. Most people would. Most people would be wrong. His voice was even, without heat. You have seen something that changes the nature of your decision. Revising a decision based on new information is not weakness. It is the most rational thing a person can do. Alara stared at him. Then she said slowly, You are a very strange man. I've been told. She looked out at the mountains again. The ceremony music, string quartet, Damien's choice. She had preferred something simpler but had not pushed, floated faintly from the garden. It was, she noted distantly, almost exactly the time she was supposed to be walking. I need a car, she said. I have one. I'm not asking you to. I know, he pushed off the railing, I'm offering. She looked at him for a long moment. The Alpha King of the Dren dynasty, one hand in his pocket, head slightly tilted, dark eyes on hers with an expression that was not pity. She would have rejected pity instantly, but something more like the particular attention of someone who found her genuinely interesting. Why, she asked. Because, he said, you are worth considerably more than what is currently being offered to you. And it seems like someone should say so out loud. The string quartet shifted to the processional. Ilara Weiss picked up her small black bag. "All right, Caius Dren," she said, "let's go." They went out through the kitchen. This was Juno's idea, and it was an excellent one. The catering staff, 15 people in white jackets moving with organized urgency, barely looked up as 3 people crossed through the stainless steel and steam. The caterer, a solid woman with silver-streaked hair and the eyes of someone who had seen everything, caught Ilara's gaze as she passed and gave her a single nod that managed to convey both solidarity and encouragement in a remarkably efficient gesture. Ilara nodded back. Through the kitchen, down the delivery corridor, out the side door that opened into the service yard where a black vehicle was parked, sleek and large, and somehow unsurprising as an extension of its owner. Caius's driver opened the door without being asked. Ilara stopped at the threshold. She turned and looked at the estate one last time. Stone and white flowers and the distant lift of string music in the mountain air. 5 years, $47,000, pearl clips and a veil, and the careful architecture of a life she had built around a man who had been building something else the whole time. She felt the grief of it, let herself feel it, sharp and real and significant. Then she got in the car. Juno slid in beside her. Caius sat across from them, the way men accustomed to large vehicles sat, without compression, occupying the space naturally. "Where?" the driver asked. Ilara opened her mouth, closed it. "I don't," she laughed again, and this time it was different. This time it had something wild at the edges. "I genuinely don't know. I don't have a plan past not here." "My lodge is 40 minutes from here," Caius said. "In the mountains. It's quiet and it has a very well-stocked bar and a kitchen that functions and guest rooms with locks. You're inviting a woman you met 20 minutes ago to stay in your lodge. I'm offering a safe, private location to someone who needs one. The invitation extends to your friend." Juno raised her hand. "I'm in. Categorically, sight unseen, I'm in." "She's very decisive," Caius observed. "It's her best quality," Ilara said. "One of them," Juno said. Ilara looked at Caius Dren across the interior of the car. He looked back. Outside, the trees were beginning, the old growth coming up on both sides of the service road as they pulled away from the Ashford estate. "Okay," Ilara said. "Okay," Caius agreed. And the car moved into the trees, and the music faded, and Ilara Voss left her wedding behind. Chapter 8, What the Mountains Hold. The lodge was not what Ilara had expected. She had expected something like the Ashford estate, grand, deliberate, built to project. Old money made into architecture, every room a statement about who had built it and why they were worth knowing. The Dren Lodge was something different. It was large, yes, 4 stories of timber and stone that blended into the mountain flank it was built against so naturally it looked like it had grown there. But it was not showy. The great room had ceilings that made you feel small in the good way, the way forests did, the way the scale of the natural world did when you stopped resisting it. The furniture was the kind that was built to be used, not looked at. The windows faced the valley and the mountain peaks beyond it, and the late afternoon light came through them in long, amber bars that made the whole room glow. There were books everywhere. Real ones, not the decorative kind arranged by color or spine size, but the reed kind, creased and flagged and occasionally lying open where someone had left them. And there was a dog, an enormous silver-gray wolf hybrid who appeared from somewhere, assessed Ilara with amber eyes, and then pressed his whole head into her hand with a confidence that suggested he had already decided. "That's Bishop," Caius said. "Does he belong to you, or does he live here independently?" "Debatable," Caius said. "He arrived 3 years ago during a storm. We reached an arrangement." "What kind of arrangement?" "He stays, I feed him, he tolerates me." The dog, Bishop, shifted and leaned his full weight against Ilara's leg, with the settled certainty of someone who had made an irrevocable decision. "He likes you," Caius observed. "Animals usually do," Alara said. She was scratching Bishop's ears, and she realized her hands had finally started shaking, very slightly, barely visible, but there. The adrenaline receding, the body catching up to what had happened. Juno noticed. She took the ice cream container from where Alara had been somehow still carrying it, half melted now, slightly ridiculous, and she steered Alara toward the large couch in front of the fireplace with the gentle, firm efficiency of someone who had navigated emotional emergencies before. "Sit," Juno said. Alara sat. Caius disappeared toward the back of the lodge and returned a few minutes later with a bottle and 3 glasses. Not the showy, heavily marketed whiskey that people displayed but didn't drink, but a small batch single malt from a distillery Alara recognized as quietly, seriously excellent. He poured without asking how much anyone wanted and set the glasses down. "The guest rooms are upstairs, both with their own bathrooms," he said. "The kitchen is through there. There's food, the cook comes in the mornings. You can stay as long as you need." He looked at Alara. "You don't owe me conversation or explanation or anything else. This is just a place." She looked up at him. "You keep doing that." "Doing what?" "Saying the thing that isn't," she stopped, tried again. "Most people need something from you. Even when they're being kind, they need you to perform gratitude in a particular way, or to need them in the right amount, or to validate their decision to be kind." She held his gaze. "You keep just giving things, without requiring a specific response." He considered this for a moment. "I find the required response exhausting, for everyone involved." "Yes," she said, "so do I." Bishop arranged himself across both their feet, which solved the question of where Caius would sit by making standing untenable. He sat. Juno, who was watching all of this with the expression of someone running calculations, picked up her scotch and said nothing, which was its own kind of eloquence. They talked. That was perhaps the thing Alara had least expected. That what would happen in the lodge on the night that should have been her wedding night was simply conversation. Not therapy, not crisis management. Just talking the way people talked when they stopped performing for each other, moving through subjects the way rivers moved, following the terrain. She told him about her research, about the watershed study she'd had to pause for the wedding, about the 3 months of field work she'd been planning for the spring, about the particular quality of light in the early morning on a mountain river when the mist was still on the water, and the wolves hadn't come down from the high country yet. He told her about the Dren territories, not in the political sense, not the borders and the negotiations, but the land itself. The old growth stands in the north that he'd had written into the Pact Covenant as permanently protected. The migration corridors they'd maintained across 4 generations of territorial agreements because his great-grandfather had believed, with a conviction that had only been vindicated by time, that the land remembered what you did to it. "He sounds like someone I would have liked," Alara said. "He would have liked your papers," Caius said. He was convinced before the terminology existed that ecosystems had to be understood as whole systems or not at all. That's exactly what managed retreat argues. You can't pick out the pieces you want to save and ignore the rest. It doesn't work like that. She was leaning forward now, animated in a way she hadn't been all day, in a way she was used to being in seminar rooms and field camps and not, she realized, at Ashford Pack events. The whole thing moves together. You can't defend one section of a floodplain indefinitely while the rest is going. You're just spending resources delaying the inevitable, and meanwhile the energy you could have spent on a managed transition is gone. "Is that what you're thinking about right now?" Caius asked. "Or is it a metaphor?" She stopped. She looked at him. "Both," she said. Juno had fallen asleep on the other end of the couch an hour ago, which Alara had been pretending not to notice, because It seemed important not to call attention to the fact that this had shifted from group conversation to something else. The fire had burned low. Bishop was a warm, immovable weight. The scotch was 3/4 gone. "I spent 5 years defending something that wasn't sustainable," Alara said quietly. "Telling myself the signs meant something other than what they meant. Adjusting to accommodate his asterisk shape asterisk, when the shape was never going to change to accommodate mine." "Why?" Caius asked, not judgmentally, just the question direct and honest. "Because I loved him," she said. "And I thought love was supposed to be enough to make things work." "Love is necessary," Caius said. "It's not sufficient." "No," she looked at her hands. "No, it's not. What else do you need?" She considered this seriously, gave it the thought it deserved. "Someone who sees me as I actually am," she said, "not as what I could be arranged into, not as a luna-shaped space to fill." She turned to look at him. "Someone who reads my papers." Something shifted in his face, very slight, very controlled, but there. "That's a low bar," he said. "You'd think," she said. She woke to mountains. The guest room faced east, and the sun was coming up behind the peaks in a way that painted the sky in stages deep violet, giving way to the most astonishing sequence of rose and amber, and finally, a clear, sharp blue that looked like it had been polished. Ilara sat up. The dress was on the chair. She had changed into a large flannel shirt that Caius's housekeeper had produced last night with the same matter-of-fact efficiency that seemed to characterize the entire lodge, and the pearl clips were on the nightstand. The veil was probably still somewhere at the Ashford estate. She felt. She catalogued it carefully, the way she catalogued data. There was grief, yes, genuine and significant, the grief of a life she had planned and a love she had built and a future she had mapped that had dissolved overnight. There was anger, contained and real, that would need space eventually. There was something bruised at the center. And there was, underneath all of it, something that surprised her. Relief. Quiet and persistent as an underground spring. The sense of something returned, some version of herself she had been handing over in small increments for 5 years, renegotiating back. She got up, she went downstairs. Caius was in the great room. He had not, apparently, slept, or had slept briefly and risen before the sun, which seemed in keeping with what she was beginning to understand about him. He was at the long table near the windows with coffee and papers, actual papers, documents he was reading and annotating by hand, and Bishop was at his feet. He looked up when she came down the stairs. "Coffee," he said. "Kitchen, the pot is set." "You didn't sleep." "I sleep poorly in general." She went to the kitchen and poured coffee and came back and sat across from him at the table, and Bishop relocated immediately to her feet, and Caius looked at this with an expression that was, for just a moment, something close to rueful. "He's never done that with anyone else," Caius said. "I told you, animals." "It's not just animals." She looked up. He was looking at her in that particular way he had, direct, without performance, nothing to read into except exactly what was there. Her phone buzzed. It had been buzzing on and off since the evening before. Damien's name, then pack members, then her parents, then Damien again. She had read none of it. She had turned the volume off and put it face down. She turned it face up now. 37 missed calls, 81 messages, the most recent from Damien 12 minutes ago. "Ilara, please, we need to talk. I know what you think you saw, it's not." She put it face down again. "Do you need time?" Caius asked. "I need coffee," she said. "I need food. I need to call my parents." She picked up the mug. "And then I need to figure out what happens next." "That's a reasonable plan." "I'm a reasonable person." "I know," he said. And then, after a pause, "You're also considerably more than reasonable." She looked at him over the rim of her mug. "Caius Dren," she said, "are you?" No, he said. Not yet. It's been less than 24 hours and you've had a significant loss. But, he held her gaze, but I am a patient man, and I find you the most interesting person I have met in a very long time, and I have a good deal of territory that needs someone who understands watershed management. She laughed, actually laughed full and real, the kind that came from somewhere unguarded. Bishop's tail thumped. That is, she said, the most roundabout declaration of interest I have ever encountered. I'm not declaring anything, he said. I'm noting facts. Scientists note facts. Yes, he said. And he almost smiled. Chapter 11, The Confrontation. Damien arrived at the lodge on the third day. Alara had expected it, had in some sense waited for it, not with dread exactly, but with the specific readiness of someone who understood that certain things needed to be faced directly before they could be finished. He came alone, which was either respect or miscalculation, the gesture of a man who believed that this was still something that could be resolved between the two of them, privately, without witnesses. Chaos's sentinels let him through. Chaos himself was in the mountains on the northern boundary. Alara had told him this was something she needed to do without an audience, and he had accepted that without argument, which was, she was learning, entirely characteristic. She met Damien on the front steps. He looked like a man who had not slept in 3 days. The ice-gray eyes were shadowed. The elegant composure was present but strained at the seams. He looked at her in her jeans and borrowed flannel and no makeup and the pins no longer in her hair, and something moved through his face that might have been genuine. You look different, he said. I am different, she said. From 3 days ago. He came up the steps and she didn't move back, and they stood at the same level, face to face, for the first time since the study. Alara, his voice was low. What you saw, I know how it looked, I know what you think. I don't think, she said. I know, those are different things, I have a doctorate, I understand the difference between inference and direct observation. She held his gaze. I heard you, Damien, I read your lips through the door, after tonight it changes, she'll never know, that's not a misinterpretation. He was silent. How long, she said. The silence stretched. How long, she said again, and this time there was something in it that was not a question. 3 years, he said. 3 years. The number sat in the air between them like a physical object. 3 years, which meant that the entire architecture she had thought she was building, the careful, patient, loving construction of a shared future, had been built on ground that was already occupied. She had been a plan, a contingency, the respectable structure over the thing he actually wanted. Why didn't you end it? She asked. She was genuinely curious in the way that she was always genuinely curious about things she didn't understand. If you wanted her, why didn't you just end it with me and be with her? He looked away. Because the pack needed a Luna who could. A Luna who could what? Hold things together. You're extraordinary, Alara. You know you are. You're the kind of person who makes everything work, who everyone trusts. I needed that. You needed me, she said slowly, as an administrator. That's not what That's exactly what you said. You needed someone who could hold things together. That's not a partner. That's a COO. She felt the anger now, clean and bright. You kept me because I was useful, and you kept her because you loved her, and you thought you could have both forever, and you never once considered that I might have opinions about it. Alara. I'm not angry at you, she said. He blinked. I mean I am, she clarified. I'm furious. It will take a while to process fully, but underneath the fury I don't hate you. I understand you, that's almost worse. She looked at him steadily. You did what frightened people do. You held on to everything and hoped nothing would break. It's not brave, but it's human. I love you, he said. In my way, I do. I know, she said, and in your way * is the problem. She stepped back. I'm not coming back, Damien. I need you to understand that clearly. This is not a negotiating position or a crisis response. It's a decision I've made with full information, which is more than I had when I agreed to marry you. She looked at him. Let Sasha have what she wants. She's been waiting long enough. He flinched. Go home, Ilara said, not unkindly. Take care of your pack. Let me go. Caius found her an hour later at the edge of the East Meadow, sitting on a rock with her feet in the cold stream that ran along the bottom, Bishop beside her with his chin on her knee. He sat on the rock beside her without speaking. The mountains were doing what they did best, being indifferent and enormous and present, the peaks white above the tree line, the stream finding its way over stones without effort or agenda. He's gone, Caius asked. He's gone. Are you all right? I'm sad, she said. I'll be sad for a while. That's appropriate, actually. The grief is proportional to the love. It would be strange if it didn't hurt. Yes. But I'm also, she breathed. The mountain air was cold and sharp and tasted like itself, like nothing else on earth. I'm also more myself than I've been in 5 years. That's not nothing. No, Caius said, it's quite a lot. She looked at him. In the mountain light, with the stream sound and the smell of pine, he looked less like a king and more like a person, the lines around his eyes visible, the control slightly relaxed, something patient and genuine in the way he was simply sitting here with her. The watershed study, she said, the field work I've been postponing. Yes. It's in the Dren Northern Territories. The old-growth drainage systems, they're part of my study area. She held his gaze. I'll need access. You have it. And I'll need to be there for 3 months, probably longer. I know, a pause. My northern lodge is empty. It's near the primary study site. I know, she said. I looked it up. He turned to look at her fully, and for the first time she saw something in his face that was not the controlled surface, something warmer, more open, a crack in the mountain where light got through. Dr. Voss, he said. Ilara, she said. Ilara. He said it the way people said things they had been thinking about carefully, giving it the space it deserved. When you're ready. Not yet, she said. I know. But not never. She looked back at the stream. I'm noting a fact. He was quiet for a moment. Then so am I. Bishop sighed contentedly. The stream ran over the stones. The mountains held their indifferent, enormous permanent watch. The Northern Territory study site was everything her data had suggested it would be, and 3 things it hadn't: richer, older, and more complexly alive than the satellite imagery captured. The drainage systems here had been moving water through old-growth root systems for 3 centuries, and they showed it. The kind of layered ecological complexity that took lifetimes to build and could be destroyed in an afternoon with the wrong machinery. Ilara's field camp was set up in a clearing above the primary measurement site. She rose at 5 a.m. to take morning readings. She ate badly and thought well. She was, for the first time in what felt like a very long time, entirely in her element. Caius came on the 3rd weekend. He did not announce this in advance, which she might have found presumptuous from anyone else. From him, she found it. She examined this reaction carefully, comfortable. He arrived on a Friday evening when she was writing field notes at the camp table, and he brought food from the lodge, real food, not the freeze-dried competence she'd been subsisting on, and a bottle of the small-batch scotch, and he sat across from her and read while she wrote, and neither of them felt the need to fill the silence. This happened the following weekend, too, and the one after that. On the 4th weekend, she showed him the primary measurement site, walked him through the drainage network with the same care she brought to her most important seminars, and he asked the right questions, the questions that showed he was not nodding along but actually following, actually thinking. Standing at the edge of the upper pool with the light coming through the canopy and the sound of water moving the way it had been moving here for 3 centuries, he said. You're going to publish this. That's the plan. It'll change the way the Northern Territories are managed. That's also the plan. He looked at her. Is there anything you want to do that isn't? She thought about it. I want to swim in that, she said, pointing at the pool. He looked at the pool. It's extremely cold. I know. It's late October. I know. He considered this for approximately 3 seconds. Then he took off his jacket. She laughed that unguarded, full laugh and reached for the buttons of her field shirt, and they waded into the cold pool of a 3-century-old drainage system together in the middle of a northern old-growth forest. And the cold was shocking and real and completely present. And she surfaced from the first dive gasping and exhilarated and found him already there, 3 feet away, water-dark hair, that almost smile. Alara, he said. Chaos, she said. The pool was very clear. The trees were very old. The mountains were indifferent and enormous and permanent. She kissed him. He kissed her back slowly, with the same patience he brought to everything, without urgency, as though they had all the time in the world and he intended to use it correctly. When they surfaced from the kiss, from the cold, she said, I'm noting a fact. I know, he said, so am I. Alara published the watershed study in February. It ran 87 pages and included a methodology section that would become, over the following decade, the standard framework for managed retreat conservation in old-growth drainage systems across the Northern Territories. The acknowledgments page thanked Juno, her field assistant Marcus, her doctoral supervisor, and the Dren Pack for access and support. The dedication was a single line. For Bishop, who knew first. She moved the rest of her things to the Northern Lodge in March. This was a practical decision. The study site was close, the lodge had what she needed, and she was there most weekends anyway. It was also, she would have admitted to anyone who asked directly, considerably more than practical. Caius gave her the study, the biggest room in the lodge, the one that faced east and caught the morning light. He had her bookshelves installed while she was doing field measurements and said nothing about it until she came home to find them already full. My books were in storage, she said. I had them retrieved, he said. You went through my books. I was careful. Caius, she looked at the shelves. At her books flagged and creased and loved, shelved in her system the way she had them at home. Thank you. He looked at the shelves too. There's a gap on the ecology section, 3rd shelf. I thought you might want to fill it yourself. She looked. There was indeed a gap, a deliberate one, sized for a row of books left open. She understood what it meant. Space kept open, waiting to be filled with what she chose. I have some things in mind, she said. I assumed, he said. Later that spring, Damien married Sasha Vrel in a ceremony that the Pack Gossip Network described as beautiful and smaller than originally planned. Alara sent a gift, a book on territorial ecology that she thought would be useful for the Ashford lands, and Damien sent back a note that said simply, "Thank you. I think we were both waiting for the right story." She thought that was probably true. On the evening of the anniversary, the day that had been her wedding day to someone else, and was now simply a Tuesday in April, she sat on the east terrace of the Northern Lodge with a glass of scotch and a nearly empty pint of salted caramel Haagen-Dazs, and Bishop at her feet, and Caius in the chair beside her. The mountains were doing what they always did, being old and enormous, and utterly unconcerned with human timelines. "A year ago today," she said. "I know," he said. "I was standing in a $47,000 dress. I remember the dress." She looked at him. "Do you?" "You looked extraordinary in it," he said. "You also looked like a woman who was standing at the wrong door." "I was," she said. She held out the Haagen-Dazs. He took it, that same composure, that same complete lack of self-consciousness, and took a bite and handed it back, and she thought, This is the shape of it. Two people, scotch and ice cream and mountains and silence that doesn't need to be filled. Chaos, she said. Alara, he said. I'm glad I left. I know. I'm glad you were on the terrace. So am I. Bishop's tail moved. The mountains held their watch. The scotch was very good. And Alara Voss, who had walked away from one life in the middle of its most expected moment, had found herself, without agenda, without plan, one honest fact at a time, inside a completely different one. Larger, colder and wilder and more genuinely hers. The right story after all.